Hi everyone, this is going to be a bit of a chatty video and I'm going to give you a few tips as to how I grew my hair to waist length. A lot of these things are things I actually no longer do with my hair, simply because I've reached my goal and I want to have a bit more fun. So you may have noticed I'm wearing my hair out a bit more than I used to, and I do know that whenever I'm ready to get my hair longer again, I just have to sort of stop and get back on track and use these practices again, and I will see length retention. But right now my length is pretty steady. I'm gonna try to keep this as brief as possible, so if there are any sort of particular points that I raise that you'd like to know more about, then please comment below and I will make detailed videos based on the requests that I get. As predicted, the first thing I'm going to mention is protective styling. So what this involves is tucking your hair away in buns, plaits, twists for an extended period of time. The key for length retention with protective styling is being able to strike a balance between having moisturised hair and having low manipulation. So it's really noisy outside. So you don't want to have to take down the style every day to moisturise it, because obviously that will be a bit too much manipulation, but at the same time you don't want your hair to get very matted and dry because you've left it in for too long. This is going to vary from person to person, so you're going to have to experiment a bit and find that sweet spot. I'm sure that you will notice length retention in that way. So the next thing I'd like to mention is protecting your hair from the elements. The sun, the wind, the cold. If you're in the tropics, I'd strongly advise that you wear a hat when you're in the sun, and you also use shea butter, which has a natural SPF component, which will protect your hair a bit from the sun. And in colder weather, obviously, I'm going to say you should wear a hat, but underneath that hat, make sure you're wearing a satin scarf. The satin garment underneath your hat will help your hair retain moisture, and that's really important. The next thing is using gentler cleansers. So as you probably know, sodium lauryl sulfate is an ingredient commonly found in shampoos, and it does a really good job of removing dirt and oil from your hair. But a problem arises when you've got kinkier or curlier hair, which means that the oil from your scalp is less able to travel sort of down the bumpy hair shaft, and the result is that you've generally got dry hair. So using a sulfate containing shampoo will just exacerbate this, leaving your hair feeling a bit like a Brillo pad. So what I'd recommend instead is obviously co-washing. You could also look into water only washing, or using different cleansers like mud washes or apple cider vinegar. And what you'll notice then is that your hair doesn't get as dry, and in not getting so dry you get obviously less knotting. Scalp stimulation is another important component of any regime. Now in general on my channel I tend not to stress the growth element, because I feel that in sort of black communities worldwide, when we talk about growth we have more of a problem with retention than we do with actual sort of hair growing from the scalp. That said, it is known that if you massage your scalp, you do stimulate blood flow to the scalp, and that will improve your growth situation. Another thing that you can do is exercise. So get to the gym and you will find that perhaps your hair will grow a bit faster, but that would only be if there was originally a problem with blood flow to the scalp. So if you're sitting down all day and you're not doing for anything active, then you may notice that getting on that bicycle or going to the gym will improve the situation, probably because there was already an issue with blood flow. Something else that's really important if you want to grow longer hair is to keep your scalp clean. So oils and dirt can accumulate on your scalp very easily, and you really want to avoid this at all costs. I'm vehemently against the application of oils of any kind or any sort of products to my scalp. I keep my scalp clear of all products to avoid build-up and clogged pores, which can lead to irritation and dandruff, and instead my scalp is just sort of free to breathe and let my hair grow. Coconut oil has been shown to reduce the phenomenon known as hygral fatigue. Hygral fatigue is the process whereby our strands expand upon exposure to water, but what happens is that coconut oil is able to penetrate the hair shaft, which means that upon exposure to water the strands don't swell as much as they would without coconut oil. And what does that mean? Well, it means that the resultant breakage that occurs is minimised because coconut oil is there to sort of mitigate the effects. Usually I add the coconut oil the night before, which means that I have to wear a plastic bag over my head to sleep in. Okay, so this is something that made a huge difference in my length retention, and this was basically the cessation of the use of any sort of hair tools, so combs or brushes or afro picks in my hair. So it really does require motivation, patience, and I'd say a good YouTube playlist or film or series to watch as well. But you sit down and you separate the strands from each other manually. You can do so with coconut oil, olive oil, and added conditioner if you want, or water. You have to find what works best for you. So what I used to do when I was very sort of seriously aiming towards longer hair was I'd wear my hair in a protective style for 1 to 2 weeks, and then I would take down the protective style by finger detangling. And I'd spend a really long time doing it, but the result was, of course, that I had very long hair because it wasn't breaking. I had sort of no wisps of hair falling to the ground as you do in a normal detangling session with a comb, because I was sort of really meticulously looking at my hair and making sure not to break it as I pulled the strands apart from each other. So it does require commitment, but if you're willing to do it, then I definitely tell you to go for it. Right, so I'm taking a general principle and applying it to a specific case in my regime, and maybe you can pinpoint something particular in your own, but I've noticed that anything that improves your manageability will in effect improve your length retention. So in my case it's oil rinsing. I've noticed that when I apply an oil right after shampooing and deep conditioning my hair, it's less stripped, and in being less stripped it's more manageable. And so if it's more manageable, it means that I need less manipulation, and if it needs less manipulation, then it means there's sort of less wear and tear on my ends, and less wear and tear means less breakage. So look for things in your regimen that you do. You might stumble upon them by accident and sort of use those. If they make your hair more manageable and it means you need less manipulation, then go for it. Most people who straighten their hair aspire towards this long, flowy, bone straight look. The thing is that in order to attain this, you have to, in general, use a fine-tooth comb and a high heat setting. And so this could be at the expense of your little ends, your poor little weak ends. So I'd strongly suggest keeping this to a minimum. And logically, it follows that if you are going to use heat, you should, of course, use a heat protectant. I don't think that blow drying is as bad. I think it's really important to think about how you're manipulating your hair during the blow drying process and where you're focusing your heat. So when I blow dry my hair, I focus mainly on the roots, and I don't use combs or picks. I finger detangle and stretch my hair in plaits, and then I loosen those plaits and I use the tension method. So I pull like this and blow dry the length of my hair, focusing on the roots and not so much on the ends. Imagine it's a cold day, but you've just been invited to some sort of beer festival or an open air festival. There are loads of those here in the Netherlands. Or maybe they've just opened the ice skating rink and you really want to go with your friends, but you sort of want to look cute. So basically what my regime dictates is that you wear your hair tucked away, moisturised, and with a hat covering it, because obviously it's really cold. But what you can do is use Marley hair to cover your own hair, so you get the best of both worlds. So you essentially have the style that you would have if you were wearing your hair out, but you also have your real hair protected and moisturised, and maybe even under a hat. So I'd say that you should try using extensions that resemble your natural hair texture in order to sort of have fun with your hair without actually having fun with your hair. While moisturising conditioners supposedly help us by keeping our hair soft and making it easier to mould, protein conditioners help with the structure of it. So what they do is they temporarily fill little gaps in the hair shaft that may result just from damage, manipulation, wear and tear. So you will have this transient effect of having stronger hair. Lots of people have asked me about this because I used to use APHG maybe every 6 weeks or every month, which is a very intense protein treatment, but it takes a lot of time and it's a messy process, and you really have to be invested in your regime to do it. And as I said earlier, I'm not really working towards getting my hair any longer right now. I'm really just looking to have a bit more fun with it. But definitely, like, as soon as I'm ready to have longer hair again, I will get back on the APHG track. So these are my tips on how I grew my hair to longer lengths. If there's anything that you would like to see in more detail or you'd like to hear more about, please comment below and I will make a dedicated video to that particular component of my regime.